Dzień dobry, assalamu alaikum, ciao, konnichiwa, bonjour, hola, good morning, good morning, good morning. How are you today? I hope you're well. It's a chilly one here in SW16. If you've just joined us for the first time, then welcome. Thanks for coming. This is Ken at 10, because I'm Ken. It's 10. We're James Alexander Estate Agents, and we broadcast daily, live, all about the property market every day here in Southwest London and the whole country, actually, and give you controversial opinions on virtually everything, actually. So how are you? I hope you're doing well. Here in SW16, it's bright. It was really bright. I don't know if you noticed, but the mornings do seem to be getting nice and light. You know, I woke up this morning freezing cold, thinking, gosh, it's cold today. Then looked around, thought, wow, it's also light and bright. So, you know, it's coming. Spring is coming, albeit it seems like a long time away when you're out there shaking away, doesn't it? Something we noticed in the papers today, there's a property on the market in Clapton, and it's got 75 square feet in total. I mean, literally, this is a corridor. It's not a flat. It's a corridor. Should be legal to let such things. It's absolutely unbelievable. And this power and energy crisis is getting out of hand now, isn't it? So I've got some tips for you on that, just some simple things that might help you. And we're actually going to dedicate the podcast to it this week as well. We're going to do a little bit more when it comes to trying to help people, because more and more now people are struggling. It's a real worry, isn't it? It's a real threat. And if you want a personal opinion, I think that the government should remove VAT from fuel bills. I mean, why should they get a bigger slice of the pie when everyone else is suffering? It doesn't make any sense to me. It's inequitable. There shouldn't be VAT on things that are such rudimentary needs, especially for those on low incomes. You know, the idea of people not being able to heat their homes in 2022 is frankly not acceptable and very frustrating. So get VAT off fuel bills. That's what I say. So apart from that, I'll come back to you at the end of the show with some ideas to maybe reduce your spend. And don't forget, the podcast this week will be dedicated to some more money-saving tips that might help you reduce those energy bills, because I know it's a real threat. A lot of our customers are talking about it, and it may well make buyers look more carefully at energy performance certificates. There are several controversial things about those as well, but that's for another day. Right, the news today. Start with a Telegraph. Interest rate rises will lock 1 in 10 out of the housing market. This is the Bank of England's recent rate rises that will deny 1 in 10 potential homeowners the chance to step onto the property ladder and put a damper on house prices, experts have warned. The base rate was doubled to 0.5% on Tuesday in what was the first of 4 increases the city expect this year. The Capital Economics has forecasted that the rate will reach 1.25% by the end of 2022. Increasingly expensive debt will have consequences for buyers. Some 60,000 previously able to borrow would fail borrowing stress tests if rates were 1.25%, they predicted. In 2020, there was 614,000 purchases using a bank loan. And if this was repeated this year, 1 in 10 sales would fall through. Lucian Cook of Savills reported the rate rise and stricter affordability tests imposed on borrowers would limit sales and create a drag on prices. He added that if the rate rose to 1.25%, that would have an impact on the number of buyers and limit how much people can borrow. But that's true, but there are two sides to this. They're actually considering reducing that stress test because I think that the stress test goes up to add that 1.25 onto another number. And therefore, the rates that they're stress testing you out are way, way above the reality of normal life. And that's one of the problems, you know, and it never ceases to amaze me that we've got people that have been renting for literally years, and I'm talking about in some cases decade or more, that are paying amounts that are similar to what they could afford on mortgage, but they can't get the equivalent mortgage. It just doesn't seem fair. So there needs to be some sort of bridge of that gap, I think, at some point, hopefully anyway. The Sun reports again that interest rates have increased and there are standard variable rates going up all over the place, as you might expect. Santander has said that their tracker rates will rise by the same amount, as have many other lenders. But there are also some rates that have come down. So speak to your IFA. You might find there's some surprisingly good deals out there still. The government is willing to explore shutting down developers that do not contribute an adequate amount to the cladding fund. Well, you know, one of the problems is that small developers have been known, shock horror, to open a limited company, create a development, and then shut that company. And many of the small developments that we deal with, those builders no longer exist. So those people have no redress, you know. So the idea that people can just lean on the builders or the government can just lean on the builders, I think they might find that the builders ducked out in many cases years ago. The stamp duty revenue has risen, according to the Times, and that's no surprise, is it, given how busy the market's been. The Treasury received a record income from property sales after calling a halt to the stamp duty holiday. Official figures show they generated £4.3 billion in the quarter. Can you imagine that? £4.3 billion they got from housing. The receipts were 700 million higher than the previous peak in the third quarter of 2017. That's just incredible, isn't it? And it just goes to show that it's not all about the stamp duty holiday, because actually we're talking about post that holiday when we're looking at those figures. Sadiq Khan's been saying a lot, doesn't he always? He says that the government should stop selling police stations to property developers, and also that he wants to see a crackdown on overseas ownership, particularly the flow of Russian dirty money. Now, I think in the light of events in Ukraine and what we all know anyway, the seedy stuff that goes on over there, I don't think that would face much of a challenge. And I would suspect that they're probably looking to crack down more on that side of things anyway. They certainly should be. And the anti-money laundering rules are getting stricter and stricter, and rightly so in my view. How will the rate rise affect property prices? Asks the Sunday Times. It says that the property market won't have much of an impact on the property market because supply is low and so prices high. And this is something we talked about for a long time. You know, the idea that raises an eyebrow that, you know, rates have doubled. Well, they have doubled, but they've doubled from a historical low. I mean, we're talking about 0.25 of a point. You know, if you go back in time, it wasn't that long ago that they were rising in 1% increments, and that was massively painful. But when we're talking about the way it's going slowly at the moment, for most people, it won't be a problem. I do fear for the poorest in society, though, and I'll tell you why, because they're the ones that can't switch rates. They're the ones that can't fix at the lower rates. They're the ones that don't have the equity. They're the ones whose jobs have changed, and the lenders won't allow them to go to a new lender because the new lenders will consider them a bigger risk, and the existing lender won't let them necessarily jump onto other products either. And that's something that needs addressing, I think. Apart from that, the heat pumps, this is an interesting one. I picked this up in the Daily Telegraph, and it's ironic. Everybody's talking about, you know, go out and get all these green efficient things, and the government are behind it, aren't they? Well, listen to this. This is from the Daily Telegraph. The government is to overhaul energy ratings for homes as concerns grow that under the current system, installing a heat pump could actually cut the value of properties. Energy performance certificates, grade a house from A to G. Oh, sorry, I should read that. Energy performance, grade a house from A to G based on the rating. And the government's held meetings to try and rectify this. But, you know, if you listen to one of our previous podcasts with Bob Harris, and by the way, we're just about to put those on our website, jamesalexander.com, so you've got an easy link to those. But if you look up the Property Buyer and Sellers podcast and look for the one on energy ratings with Bob Harris, you'll find it really quite revealing how many of the things that you might expect were good turned out to be bad. And Bob has first-hand experience as a real greenie and someone that really wants to make a difference. He ended up switching his ground source heat pump to a gas central heating boiler. So it's interesting. These things may be good in theory, but do they actually work in practice? Question. Property value hotspots have been unveiled, and this is saying that as house prices continue to soar, they look at where you can get the best value for money. The average property size in the UK is 92.4 square metres, and the average price 271,000, and that's with the average home costing £2,936 per square metre. And if you look at those, the cheapest areas is in Gwent in Wales, where a square metre of a house costs £1,268. And then Burnley in Lancashire is another area with a very low cost per square metre at £1,277. Unsurprisingly, you'll get the least money in Kensington and Chelsea. Well, who knew? Everybody, I suspect, but there we are. People could buy a home. Oh, this is an interesting one. Kirsty Allsop. There's something dislikable about this one for me. The idea, more young people could afford a home if they made sacrifices, according to location presenter Kirsty Allsop. She explained that she bought her first property at the age of 21. Well, Kirsty, here's a newsflash. When you bought the property, the values were much lower and it was more affordable. Other people are prepared to do those sacrifices, but the sacrifices needed today, and buying a pizza and a Costa ain't going to cut it. It's not going to make the difference. Why? Because the difference is too big. There are people who can afford it and can just about squeeze in, and there are plenty of people out there that work just as hard and are just as frugal as you were, but can't quite make it. So I think it's a little bit patronizing when you boast about the fact that interest rates were high and you were earning low, because prices were so much lower as well. Anyway, rant over on Kirsty for the day. Seems to be on an anti-Kirsty and Phil at the moment, doesn't it? But there we are. A lot of these TV personalities are not for me. I think that's because I've got more of a face for radio, but there we are. Conservative voters want more affordable housing stock. It used to be the other way, didn't it? A recent poll suggested that the majority of Conservative voters want their party to deliver more affordable housing and let councils buy up empty properties. That's interesting, and that comes from The Guardian. Consumer confidence has fallen back a bit among price rises. A survey by Deloitte says that growing fears about the cost of living crisis are affecting many Britons. Well, as we've already said, having said all that, there does seem to be a real lack of supply, which is making a difference anyway. The various things that we can look at in terms of what makes a difference on energy saving. I wanted to talk about these just quickly because it might help some of you. As something I picked up in the Sunday Times this week, potential annual saving for things that you can do that might help. These are not groundbreaking, but they might help you a little bit. The potential annual saving, £65 you can save a year if you take a 4-minute shower. Switch off your standbys, your TVs and all the like of it, £55. And you can now buy these smart plugs where you can turn them all off with one flick on your app. So they might be worth looking at as well. Tumble dryers, avoid using the tumble dryer, save you £55 a year. Draft proof gaps, that's something that I was doing the weekend actually. I had my mastic gun out, climbing up on the first floor and looking around for drafts in and around the window frames, because sometimes the mastic just falls away a little bit. And I found I had some gaps up there, and certainly stopped a few gals coming through into the bedroom. So that can save up to £40 a year. Insulate your hot water cylinder, that can save you £35. Don't overfill the kettle and add a tap aerator, can save you £33. Wash at 30 degrees centigrade and reduce that use by once a week will save you £28. Saving off lights can save you £20 a year. And reduce your dishwasher run by one a week can save £14 a year. And swap one bath for a shower, 11. Not groundbreaking, I know, but it might help some people, because I know a lot of people are really, really worried about this. And James Coney goes on to say, your granny was right, you need to put on a jumper. One of the things that one of my staff members here, being typically practical and Eastern European, says is that, if you're really cold, go out for a walk, go out for a brisk walk. And when you come back in, everything will seem much warmer. That's probably at the extreme end of the scale, but it does work. It does, doesn't it? When you walk back in and that heat hits you, it's like, wow. So apart from that, we're just about to go into the sales meeting for the week. Lots of offers coming in. Lettings is picking up. There's plenty of people out there looking, good quality applicants looking around the area. We're still down a member of staff thanks to COVID, thanks Omicron. I don't think it's that. I think it's Delta. And we wish Kelly Welsh should be back soon. Apart from that, hope you have a fantastic day. Look after yourselves and your families. We'll be back tomorrow with another edition. Until then, ciao.